It lives.
Yes, we are alive. Not in the Frankenstein way.
It's
Welcome back.
alive.
Oh, goodness. Welcome back, everybody. We're going to have a fun live today. We have CM Alongi on today. I hope I'm not
Alongi.
Alongi. I'm sorry.
It happens all the time, ever since kindergarten. All right, you're
I
fine.
should have checked that before we went live, but such is life. On today, CM has been doing the YouTube thing since way before me. So, bowing to the YouTube master. She's also a TikToker, a writer. She's an agented writer, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So, you've been well beyond where a lot of us are trying to get already. And we're so excited to talk about you and your books. Hey, Luna. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about the kind of fantasy you write before we jump in.
Of course. So, yeah, I honestly write a little bit of everything. I have found I have an epic fantasy novella series called the Blackwing series. The first 5 books are coming out this year. To Kill a Necromancer is currently out. The sequel, Hadgarib's Curse, comes out March 17th, and that is an epic fantasy set in a world loosely inspired by ancient Greece and Rome. It's a queer fantasy. Pretty much all the major characters are LGBTQ plus, and it's a pretty standard ragtag team of heroes have to work together to save the world. In June, I have a science fiction novel that comes out called Citadel, and that one is basically about wolves with wings, telepathy, and telekinesis. Basically,
Everything you could want as a wolf.
I know, right? On my Patreon, I am publishing a book chapter by chapter that was inspired by a TikTok series that I did, where basically the Dark Lord ends up kind of adopting the princess that was sent to assassinate him. And the kingdom of the princess that sent her was like, oh, she's obviously been kidnapped, so we have to go and rescue her. So that's a little more comedic, but it's also still pretty dark. And then on TikTok, I currently have a cafe latte series, which is about a cafe run by fairies. And they're
and
running
it's amazing. I love it.
And that's a lot funnier, a lot lighter. That one has they're dealing with Karens, they're dealing with rude customers. In the last couple of videos, they've been dealing with the fairies' ex-vampire boyfriend, or vampire ex-boyfriend. So yeah, there's been a lot. I write a lot. So that's paranormal, that is epic fantasy, and that's science fiction, all over the place. But like the things that ties them together, the books definitely tend to be a little bit darker, but they do have a happy or at least bittersweet ending. Almost a lot of the characters, or at least some of the characters in each story, are somewhere in the LGBTQIA plus rainbow, because I myself am queer. There's almost always at least one powerful femme character, usually multiple. And I really love going into complicated world building and political systems and histories. And that's just my jam.
And you do it so well. I have actually read some of your work. So I'm thinking, man, how many years ago was it now? It feels like forever, but it hasn't been that long. When we met in the fantasy writer group
Yep.
on Facebook.
Yep.
And I was just like, there's something special about your work. You read a lot of indie books, and so many are really gems. And then you get to one, and it's just like, there's just something different. This is one I'd like to see turned into a movie one day.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. That is the dream, but I'm just focusing on getting published right now and surviving to the next year, because having 6 stories come out in a single year, not even a single year, in a single 5-month span, would not recommend. Don't do that. Just don't do it.
I'm right.
We're only 1.5 in, and it's just like, no, I may have made a horrible mistake here.
All the people that are like, put out a book every 2 to 3 months or every 3 to 4 months. It's like, you don't get it till you're in it.
No, yeah, no, there's so much of, because like the creative process itself just takes so much out of you. Like my TikTok series, that's just, one little, 2 to 5 minute videos a day. And I only do that, like I do them in weekly batches. So that's like an entire day where I am, yes, it is best to pace yourself, Luna. So like once a week, that's like an entire day dedicated to acting, filming and editing them, so I can just crank them out once or twice a day. And that is a lot. Like there's nothing else going on that day. And that's not including scripting them. And then for writing the actual books and novellas like Citadel, like Blackwing, then you have, you gotta outline it, unless you're a pantser and you're insane and you go by the seat of your pants. I'm a planner, okay? I have sanity. You got to outline it, plan it, do some of the world building, and then you got to actually write the rough draft, and then you read through it, realize that it's garbage, so you rewrite it, and you do that a couple of times, and then you get an editor or a critique partner or someone else to also read it and tell you all the things you did wrong. So you revise it again, and then you get some beta readers to tell you more things that you got wrong, and then you revise it again. And then you do that one more time, and then you can publish it, and then all of your readers that paid to read the book will tell you what you did wrong. And that's what it's like to be a writer.
Yes, there it is, summed up in a nutshell. I've got to say, you just manage so many things. You've got your YouTube, you've got the TikTok, you've got the writing, you've got the publishing. How do you fit that all in with real life on top of it?
Well, it helps that I don't have a social life. I mean, writers were introverts.
Introverts unite.
Yeah, I know, right? It's not entirely true. I do obviously have friends, family, and I regularly do meet up with them. There's a Dungeons and Dragons group that we get together every now and then. I'm going to MarsCon in Bloomington. Part of that is to actually promote the book, but also it's just because it's a convention and it's for geeks. Of course I'm going to be there. I know it sounds cheesy, but I'm a Nichiren Buddhist. So we have weekly gatherings where we talk about Buddhism and all that stuff. And that also kind of helps me keep my head on straight. Having a bullet journal or some sort of calendar system is life-saving, because that keeps everything organized, and that helps me figure out, okay, where do I have time to set aside an hour to crank out that chapter that I've been procrastinating? Where do I have time to do the dishes that have been sitting in my sink for 5 days? Where do I have time to do this? And like, oh, I haven't met up with my friend Alex in months. We should actually do that, because I don't want adulting to tear us apart. So, a lot of it is just learning how to do basic time management. And then a lot of it is reminding myself that my life is not just around social media. It's not just around books and writing. As much as I love it, I do occasionally have to get out and see the sunshine and see other human beings. So that is very, very necessary for my health, because humans are social creatures, and that helps.
Yeah. So what got you going on this path into the world of books? Have you always been like a writer or reader?
Yes, always. I mean, honestly, a lot of it is probably genetic and how I was raised, because my father has a couple of young adult books, the Jennifer Scales series published. That's about a teenager who can turn into a dragon on the crescent moon, so were dragons. And then my mother is a New York Times bestselling author of paranormal romance.
Wow.
So that apple plopped straight down for me. My brother decided to be a counselor, a youth counselor for mental health for school. So, he's, off doing whatever. But yeah, no, for me, it was just always, when I was 6 or 7, I still remember we had a school assignment where we had to handwrite a book, and they would like actually get it published with this little printing press, and we could give it to our family. And that was really cool. And I loved that. And I was like staying after school for an hour or so, because I would have like, had an actual long story, and I wanted to get it done. And my teacher's like, you can write a shorter story. I'm like, no, it must be good. It has to have all this. And then when I was 11 or 12, my parents let me like on the computer to type up stories. And that was when I created my first actual manuscript, 300 pages of piping hot garbage that I made my poor father read. And because my mother, she would, write her manuscript, and then she'd give it to my dad to read. He was her critique partner. And so he would give her feedback on that, and then mom would get it published, and it would become a New York Times bestseller. So I thought, if I write a book and I give it to my dad to read, then I'll become a New York Times bestselling author. Yeah, and he read every single one of those pages. I know, because he had a red pen and red ink
Oh
was
no.
on every single page. But he gave me like actual really good constructive criticism. He treated it very seriously, the way he would if it was my mom, if it was a person on his team. And that really stuck with me, and that really helped me encourage me, but also, gave me a clear path of like, okay, here's where I need to improve and work on it. And so throughout high school, throughout college, after college, I just kept grinding it and rewriting that same manuscript with multiple revisions. And now it comes out in June, called Citadel.
Yay.
You
And the
can you
link
can
to
you can trace the straight line to it.
yes, it runs in the family. You inherited it.
Yeah, it really does. But yeah, and it's kind of funny because my mom does, paranormal romance, where like the whole point is people falling in love, and it's R-rated romance, which is why I haven't read it. I don't need to read a scene written by my mother as inspired by my father. Okay, I don't need that. I don't need that image in my head at all. And I, of course, am a romantic asexual. I don't experience romantic or sexual attraction at all, and that is very much reflected in my books. So, Luna is asking, which of your books did you have the most fun with? I mean, they're all like each have their own thing. Like, when I first dive into it, it's like, oh, this is new and exciting, and I get to do science fiction. I'm not used to that. Or like, oh, this is an ancient Greek type of world. This, I'm used to medieval type of thing. This is really fun. Or like, oh, we're playing with all the fantasy tropes and the accidentally kidnapped Patreon thing. Like, this is like, how many can I flip on top of their heads? But like, God, the most fun with so your Citadel was kind of the most challenging. Blackwing has just kind of been a little bit of a grind. I do think I'm having the most fun with the Blackwing novella series, simply because like a lot of the characters are, it's not a comedy, but a lot of the characters are sarcastic and they snipe at each other, and it's very much an enemies to friends
Mm.
situation, especially in the first 5 books, where Janua, who is a paladin, she's given powers from her god, her deity, who is like king of the gods, fire and sun deity, hates necromancers. She has to team up with a necromancer in order to face the bigger threat. And they, of course, start off hating each other, distrusting each other. There's centuries of hatred between their sides. And then over the course of the series, they get, closer and closer together. They realize, the flaws in the history, the truth of what's been going on, and all that jazz. And they actually start to care for each other. It's not going to be enemies to lovers, by the way. I hate that. Enemies to friends is superior in every way. You can fight me. But yeah, but that's probably been the most fun, is having these two characters go from hating and distrusting each other to tolerating each other through sarcasm and sniping and constantly poking at each other, to actually caring about each other and forging this friendship while still being sarcastic and sniping at each other. That's really fun. I love that. I know. I mean, the people are already dead, so like, you don't have to be that delicate.
What I love about the necromancer, since we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
about him, is really that necromancers are almost always painted in one of the big bad lights.
Mm-hmm. Oh
And
yeah.
to see that shifted into a story where you ask yourself, are they really as bad as they've been made out to be, is so unique. What gave you that idea?
Um, Current events and history. I mean, I'll be totally honest. Stephanie, I'll get to your question in a minute, I promise. But yeah, no, a lot of with Blackwing and To Kill a Necromancer, it was originally inspired by Diablo 2. I got hit with COVID.
Oh,
Yeah, the video game. I got hit with COVID a while ago, and to help
mm,
pass the time, I was fine. It was just a cold for me. But I was bored and isolated, and my brother loves computer games. We both grew up with Diablo 2. So I contacted him online and I was like, hey, help me kill a couple of hours. Let's do Diablo 2 together. And I played, you can play, for those who don't know, basically you can choose from a variety of classes. You can play a sorceress, you can play a barbarian, a druid, an Amazon, an assassin, a necromancer, a paladin. And if you're doing multiplayer, you can of course have a whole team. And the whole point is you're playing this character and you're traveling around the world, defeating evil, fighting bad guys, leading up to Diablo. Um, And that was really fun. I was playing in Amazon. He played a druid. And while we were playing, I thought, because they all have such distinct, unique characters. And of course, the necromancer is edgy and dark, and the paladin is, a goody two shoes. I thought, hey, wouldn't it be hilarious if the necromancer and the paladin had to team up in order to travel around this world and fight Diablo together? 30 pages of world building and character notes later, where like I thought it was going to be a fan fiction, but it kind of spiraled out of control from there. And I was like, well, now I have to write this again.
Exactly.
I went to Hamline University and I graduated in 2017. In my major, I did a double bachelor's in history and social justice, or as I like to say it, a study in how the world is fucked up, how it got there, and how to fix it. And so just reading a lot about how misinformation and how certain groups throughout history have been demonized through propaganda, through how oppressive systems get to power and stay in power by creating these scapegoats, by saying, these people are dangerous. You need me to protect you from these people. So make me in charge, give me the power, and I will save you from these terrifying people who are out to get your children, who are out to kill you, who are out for your women, whatever the narrative is. And that fear mongering is what keeps those people in charge, in power. And that can last from, just a few decades, like we saw that with the rise of Nazi Germany, and that can lead on through centuries, the way we've been seeing with certain groups of people, how they've been demonizing communities of color, especially Black people, how they are currently trying to demonize trans and LGBTQ people. It's terrifying, especially if you're in that community. But it's, you got to fight it in multiple ways. We're not out of the fight yet, and this is one of the ways of like, okay, well, here's a loosely veiled fantasy version of that. I'm not subtle with my metaphors, okay? I'm not. Stephanie and Greg Parr is saying, will Cafe Latte become a book? So Cafe Latte is my TikTok series about the cafe that is run by fairies, and I've resisted turning it into a book for a wide variety of reasons, one of them being all the shit that I have going on right now. But a short answer is eventually. At least it would be something like Accidentally Kidnapped, where it's on my Patreon chapter by chapter, and then I'll get the whole thing together, revise it, and then send it to publishers that way. But with everything else I have going on, the Blackwing series, Citadel, Accidentally Kidnapped, that's currently dominating my Patreon. July is the earliest I could have that for you guys, and that is not a guarantee. That's not a promise. That is, please be patient.
That is,
please bear with me.
Out, go follow.
Yes.
If you link tree in the description box, so go follow.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's a lot going on, but it is on my list.
Yes. So what point made you shift from the person who loved to write to the person who's actually decided, this is what I'm going to pitch, this is what I'm going to publish, this is the time?
Well, I decided that I was going to be a published writer when I was 16 years old. And, when you're 16, 17, late high school, everyone starts asking you, so what college are you going to? What are you going to pursue as a career? There's a lot of pressure that, frankly, we should not be putting on teenagers. But it does get us thinking about our futures. And while my parents did warn me about the financial issues of being a writer, and I grew up watching it, they basically said, we support you in this if this is what you really, really want to do, but you should know you're going to struggle. So maybe pursue a secondary career at first, and then write on the side the way your mother did for years. And then once it kicks off, then you can do what she did and do it full time. And that's the plan. But I started actually querying literary agents and publishers in March, April, and May of 2021. So this was a year into the pandemic. I had spent that time, I got laid off, but I'm in Minnesota, so we had a really good unemployment system going on for that time. I was getting like $800 a week, and that was more than enough to pay all of my bills. I actually got ahead of my debt, which was really nice.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was quarantining with my parents to further save on resources. So I had like 8 months until the unemployment ran out. And I basically just spent that time revising Citadel, working on some other projects, and sending it out to beta readers, critique partners to further polish and scrub that thing until it was as good as it could possibly get without actual professional help. And then that's the point where I'm just like, okay, this thing it's as ready as I can get it. And so I started querying agents, because most publishing companies, especially the big ones, won't even accept manuscripts that are not represented by literary agents. And beyond that, literary agents help you better negotiate contracts. They help you with the marketing. They help you with everything. So I queried agents and I got rejected. I queried more agents and I got rejected. I kept querying agents and I kept getting rejected. And I knew this would happen, but it still annoyed me. And finally, in a fit of frustration, I copied and pasted my the template that I'd been using for my query letters. And I posted it on a bunch of Facebook groups for writers that I'm a part of. And I basically said, hey, this is what's going on. This is what I'm doing. It's not working. Tear this thing apart. Tell me what's going on so I can actually get someone to agree to represent me. And a guy who worked at a publishing house saw that, because he was in one of these groups. And he said, I work for this company. These are my credentials. This is the link. You can actually see my picture on the website and everything. Send me the first 50 pages. This book sounds really cool. And that's how, so I got the publishing contract before I got the literary agents. And the initial contact that I had with Blackstone Publishing, his name is Rick. He's also an author, and he and I have the same literary agents with the Seymour Agency. So and I've got a really great agency team. So it was really great, but that's what pushed me over the edge, was just it's as good as I can possibly get it. And it's time for me to seek out professional help. At this point, when the only edits that you can make on a manuscript are just like little tiny words, then when you're just tinkering with it, it's time to let it go. It's time to push that thing out of the nest.
Yeah, so you got the contract and then went and used that to get an agent, essentially.
Yep. That's awesome. And it was much easier to get a literary agent when I already had a contract on hand.
Yeah. Luna asks, how do you work through writer's block, especially with so many books going at once?
I mean, so writer's block for me, it's more like it's more like project block. Like, I'll want to work on this new shiny thing that I've just thought of, but I have to work on this actual thing that I promised my readers, or that has an actual deadline. So there are a couple of ways to just kind of push through that. One of them is to kind of read what you've already written in this book, as that will kind of re-immerse you into the world. That'll get you thinking about, okay, what happens next? It's one of those things where when you're reading a book, you're like, what happens next? What happens next? Oh, right, I have to write what happens next. And that kind of kickstarts you into gear. A method that I use, I go onto YouTube. There are a bunch of creators on there who, especially writers like Overly Sarcastic Productions, Writing with Jenna Moresi, Hello Future Me, and a lot of them have videos on specific literary tropes that pop up in my stories. So I'll usually watch one or two videos on that, on world building aspects that are prevalent in my story. And that will often get me thinking of, okay, here's how that's a really cool idea. I want to throw that in my story. Or how can I incorporate this big question or how can I solve this problem that comes up a lot in these tropes in my story? That gets me thinking about that, and that I can use that energy to, start writing. And then sometimes it's literally just a matter of sitting down and forcing yourself to write just a couple hundred words in this story. And if you can promise yourself, like, I just need to write, just a little bit. And then usually, like 9 times out of 10, once you get going, you can just kind of coast on that momentum and keep going until the chapter is done, or the section is done, or, basically the promised 300 words turns into, 1,000 or 2,000 or even 3,000 on a really good day.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so a lot of it is a combination of knowing yourself and knowing what gets you thinking, what can kind of outsmart yourself, trick
Mm-hmm.
yourself into writing, and with a combination of just straight up self-discipline and sitting your ass down and writing.
Yes. And speaking of YouTubers, so we said earlier that you have a YouTube channel, and if you're watching and you're an author, go find the YouTube channel in the link in the description box,
Mm-hmm.
because there is so much good, powerful content that will really help make your writing stronger, especially if you're writing a female main character, and breaking out, I guess, of that classic male epic fantasy main character.
Yeah, the
Um,
cishet neurotypical able-bodied male character that has dominated literature and storytelling for centuries, at least in the West.
yes,
And it's
yes.
one of those things where it's like, you every now and then you get the guys who are just like, oh, so like you're just missing out on all this literature if you don't read. Guys are like, oh, you just don't want men in stories, and it's like, no, like you can totally have dude centric storytelling. Rick Riordan is one of my favorite authors of all time. I love Percy Jackson. He's great, but I want more. I
Yes.
want more than that. And also, one of the reasons why I love Rick Riordan is all of his support cast is a very wide, colorful array of people and kids. So there's that. And it's just like, if you want a story that centers around, a cishet white guy, you have millions of options to choose from, spanning throughout history and in the modern world. But if
Mm-hmm.
you want a story that centers around a woman, if you want a story that centers around a queer person, aromantic, asexual, if you want someone that centers around, someone with a specific disability or neurodivergence, you got a much shallower pool
Mm-hmm.
to pull from. And that's irked me. That's annoyed me since I was 12. And so the Blackwing novella series, the science fiction novel Citadel, the Patreon accidentally kidnapped cafe latte, that's all me trying to add a few more drops into that pool. I know it's just a little bit that I can't contribute fully, but like I can at least give you a little bit. I have a female main character, but they have the soul of a man. Does that so like a transgender female character or a trans man? I guess it would be. That's totally fine. Or do you mean that they're a female character, but they're traditionally masculine, that they're a fighter, and that's pretty classic, strong female character. We love those characters too, but I also enjoy characters that are traditionally feminine as well. In Citadel, I had a lot of fun playing around with gender roles because it's a very patriarchal society, is what Citadel is. It's a single human city on an alien planet. And it's patriarchal, it's religiously dogmatic, it's oppressive, it's ableist, it's all the things, classist. And so it has a very narrow mind of like, women are supposed to be mothers, they're supposed to be obedient wives, they're supposed to be docile, they're supposed to be sweet. If you want to have a career as a woman, you can be a nurse, a medic. Basically, medics
Mm-hmm.
are like, the medical field is the only career path that is like really open to women in this world. And Olivia, our main character, is like, fuck all that. Or I'm going to learn how to fight. I'm going to learn how to shoot a bow and arrow. I'm going to, go off on my own into the dangerous forest that only soldiers do, and be a scientist and do all these traditionally masculine things. But there's also plenty of femme characters in the Citadel story, like her sister Evelyn, who is a little bit masculine in that she also wants to pursue science, but she still presents herself in a very feminine way. She's religious, and then there's her stepmother Asaya, who is a medic, very motherly, kind of like a Mrs. Weasley type of figure, and they have command a lot of respect within the story because those women are awesome. And then on the flip side, you have the very masculine men like Olivia's father, her Ormus, her father figure, Sergeant Peterson, who are in the military, so very masculine. And then there's her best friend Riley, who is very feminine. He's,
Mm-hmm.
very empathetic. He's very sweet. He's diplomatic. He wants to be a medic, so he wants to go into this traditionally female-dominated path because he wants to heal people and nurse people and care for people. So I had a lot of fun flipping around and playing with the gender roles of these characters. And once you realize as a writer that like you don't have to have your insert gendered character here act in a gendered way. You can have them do whatever you want them to do. And once you realize these, these well-laid paths, these well-laid trails that we're kind of trained to walk down as like, this is a man and this is what men do. This is a woman and this is what women do. Once you kind of understand what's going on there, and then you can do whatever the heck you want with that. And then you can have a lot of fun with that, especially if you're talking about a very patriarchal system and commenting on that the way I did with Citadel.
Mm-hmm. Yes. A lot of good, just technical dynamics too, to writing women that even as women, we might fall into because that's what you absorb and you sort of put out what you take in over your life. And just for a fun fact for people who are watching Luna, I know you'll get a kick out of this, but the main character in the book that I'm writing that's coming out next month, she's given a suit of armor that has boob plate by who hates her. She's forced to wear it in the beginning of the book and ends up stranded in it, and it comes around to bite him later on in the story. But when
it's dangerous because it just sends the arrows and swords straight to your heart. Like,
that's right. So as I was getting ready to write this character, I found the best video on your YouTube about writing women and armor and stuff, and I was like, this is great. This is exactly what I needed to read. So just go and, like I said, check out her YouTube channel because there are some really good gems there. Even if you are writing more of a classic cis guy main character, you can write your women better in your story.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, there's this great quote that I'm paraphrasing where it's like, we've taught our girls to be strong women, but we have not taught our boys how to handle strong women. And that, I think, is kind of what the focus needs to be because, yeah, there's always a you go girl type of attitude. That is encouraged, but then, up to a point anyway. But then there's also like, we're still teaching the men and the boys that, they have to be strong and dominant and authoritative and boys don't cry and all that bullshit. And it's just like, those two you can't teach women that they're strong and powerful and that they can breathe fire and that they can dominate and also teach boys the toxicity of you have to be dominant and strong and you can't be whipped by a woman or whatever and expect them to get along.
Right.
You can't do that. So there are a lot of really great books out there. Percy Jackson comes to mind where you do have a dude-centric story and he has he still has a specific attitude of, healthy emotional vulnerability, and also treating women and non-binary people and everyone else with respect. And we do need to see more of that. So that's, if you want to write a man character, there's your assignment.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your story, your wisdom with us and answering our questions. I'm so excited. I know you're like caught up in the craziness of putting out all these books, but I'm so excited to read more of your work this year. So you said you're going to a convention.
Yes, MarsCon. It's in Bloomington, Minnesota, Twin Cities area. It's a local science fiction convention. This is my first year doing it. I'm going with my mom, so we're going as colleagues. That's going to be really fun. And we're just going to, you're welcome, Luna. I'm glad that, thank you for coming on too. Yeah, and it's just going to be really fun. I have no idea what to expect because I haven't had the chance to properly look at them. My mom basically said, hey, do you want to go to the sci-fi convention with me? And I'm like, do I?
That's awesome.
Whatever.
So if you're watching and you're in that area, you could go buy a book, get it signed. Do all the fun stuff.
Citadel comes out in June, so you're not going to be able to purchase that yet until then. And the novellas are all ebooks. We are working on an audio version, And sometime next year, I do want to cram the first 5 together into like a physically bound volume, so you can get like, you know, eventually way down the line, it's gonna be like Blackwing Volume 1, books 1 through 5, Blackwing Volume 2, books, you know, 6 through 10, whatever, and those will be physical. But for now, it is just an ebook format.
Well, that's great. That means that everybody watching can go read it now. They don't have
Oh
to
yeah,
wait,
To
except
Kill
for
a
the one that's not
Necromancer.
out yet.
Yep, To Kill a Necromancer is out now. Hedgarib's Curse comes out March 17th. Book 3 is going to come out in April. Book 4 in May. And then book 5 in either late May or early June. And then I'm going to sleep for 6 months.
Well, hang in there. Stay strong. We're excited to read your books and so excited for everything you've got going. Thank you again for hopping on, everybody. And if you're watching the replay and you had questions, leave them in the comments. I will shoot them over. And that way you can get them answered. Or you could go check out her YouTube channel in general and leave a comment on her stuff too.
And I do have a website, cmalongi.com, and that has a contact me form as well.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your day.